You study a long time to be a practitioner, 4 years minimum. Because faith is something we can build. It's something we can grow, but it takes practice, it takes work, it takes self-reflection, it takes honesty and deep commitment. We've got that. We're doing it. We're doing it. You know, our topic today, as you said so beautifully, and I love the evolving now. I love Rumi anyway, you know that, but the evolving now, I love that, is God knows the answer. But if we're going to find the answer and hear the answer, first we got to find God, right? There's these two boys. They were 8 and 10 years old, and they got in so much trouble. They were mischievous, and everybody in the neighborhood knew that if something went wrong, they looked to them first. You know, and their mom was worried. You know, moms, we worry. So she heard of a preacher in town who was very, very good at disciplining troubled boys. He had success. So she called the preacher, and he said yes, he'd see the boys, but he'd like to do it individually. So that next Monday, she sent the young boy, the 8-year-old, in first, and then the 10-year-old was going to come at 10. And so the preacher sits the boy down and looks at him, and he was a big guy with a booming voice. We know how that booming voice affects us. You just need to open that, Dave. We love it. And he said, he has a different tone than you, though. He said, "Okay, son, where do you find God?" And the 8-year-old just sat there. And he said, a little louder this time, "I mean it. Where do you find God?" And the boy just sat there. He was like, couldn't move. And so the preacher shook his finger at the young boy and said, "Okay, I mean you tell me now, where is God?" And the boy screamed, and he bolted out of the room and ran home and jumped in his closet. And he's shaken, and his older brother comes and says, "Oh, what's wrong?" And he goes, "Oh no, we're in big trouble now. God's missing, and they think we did it." Those boys, I love them, but you know, I'll tell you, we got to find God. Well, the same with us. You know, we think we have faith. We think, oh, yes, God is all there is, and we are one with God. We say that. That's a main tenet of our teaching. God is all there is. There's just one indivisible energy, an infinite intelligence that is God that, boom, created all of us out of itself. We are that individualized expression of that one, and we speak it, and we say it, and we don't live it. We only partially believe what we say. I told you we're works in progress, but we only partially believe it. And we're living as limited versions of ourselves. But I want to tell you what, God is the most wonderful parent. Truly, God is a wonderful parent. Gives us everything we need for us to discover. We have to ask for it. We have to learn how to use it. We have to be responsible for it. We can keep it or not. It's there for us. We just have to accept it. And God has absolutely no judgment. If we do something right or wrong, that infinite spirit knows that we're on the process, that in that eternal now, that evolving now, ever-growing now, that we're learning and growing and everything's an opportunity. So that's great also. And last but not least, that infinite spirit is always there. That's why when the practitioners were talking, that they can get up here and know the answer for you. Because it's just all one. Spirit is there always. And this knowing isn't something new. We just don't claim that as what we know as religious scientists or science of mind. But in the Bhagavad Gita 5,000 years ago, Krishna, it's a Hindu book of spiritual verse, that their sacred book. And Krishna, which is God, says to Arjuna, the warrior, all paths lead to God. Meaning there's only one way we can go, and that's a spiral, evolutionary spiral upward to the oneness. Now, we can take detours on the way, and some of us can take a whole lot longer to get there, but that's one path. And Joseph Campbell, who's a contemporary professor, comparative mythology, comparative religion. He studied all about life. He knows about life. He said, pray to any God, and I will answer. And the prophet Isaiah said, before they call, I will answer. And while they are speaking, I will hear. That presence is always here for us. But we must accept it and claim it and know that it is there. Rumi says, at the very center of your heart is where life begins. So if we want to know where infinite spirit, where that pure divine essence lives, it's at the center of our heart. He goes on to say the most beautiful place on earth is right there in the heart. Ernest Holmes tells us, as many other people do, that God speaks to our heart, but in a universal language. It's not a language, an English language, a Japanese, a German. It's not that. It's a language of feeling that everyone knows. We express the voice of God, that feeling nature. We express it in our own language, in our own experiences and actions. But that's where it comes. So our job to find God is to do just what that beautiful song said that Gretchen was singing. We have to clear the path. We have to recognize where we have the blocks between that infinite, beautiful essence and our minds, because our minds will only take us so far. Now, I almost didn't come to service today because, and it's your fault, Barbara. But I knew Barbara was doing Practicing Presence, and I saw she was on the practitioner panel, and that was really exciting. And I thought back to when Barbara led a class. It was about 10 years ago, Barbara, in Crucial Conversations. She led a class for people, the staff here at the time, and a few other people that wanted to be here. The tools to deal with difficult conversations. Because anytime you're in a large group or you have people working together to make decisions, there are tough, crucial conversations. And I thought about that, and the thing that has always stayed with me is that to have these tough conversations, you need to have a pool of shared meaning. And if we're going to have a conversation with God, it has to be a balanced sharing of meaning. So I went to my book, and that's why I almost didn't come. I put my nose in my book again, and I was reading, and I got so into it because it's so good. But let me tell you what it said. I thought, just what I said about the heart. One of the tools, it says, first of all, recognize where you're stuck so you can get unstuck. Isn't that true for us? We have all. I read in a Mark Nepo book, most of us just rearrange our prejudices and think that we're moving forward, you know? Isn't that true? We're not really doing the work to get through to the other side. We just keep rearranging what we know is true, you know? But it says, so recognize that, but then start with the heart. This is from a book that's used for businesses. And start with the heart, because you have to know what you really want. And Mary, when you were talking about the prayer wall this Sunday, I thought that's where we're going to go. Because when you start with the heart, it's what Rumi said. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going across the doorsill where the two worlds meet. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. So when you open your heart and ask for what you really want, you know, most of us come to our prayer with a whole tray full of problems. And we say, okay, God, pay my house payment. Make my husband nicer. Make my kids more cooperative. Give me this, give me that, do this. We come with a truckload of problems. Well, God doesn't think in problems. God thinks in solutions. So when we come to God with all of these problems, you know, there's only two words that we would really understand that God knows. Yea, yes, and amen. It is done. Here are my problems. Good. Great. If we come to our prayer with what we want, what is it you want? Do you want peace? Do you want prosperity? Do you want love? Do you want kindness? Do you want cooperation? What is it you want? What is that? And when we come to that place, that sacred place, we know that we are open and available. Again, that's how we practice faith. We take a step beyond the problems. Now, so many of us feel like failures at times. Oh, I can think of the biggest failure Kirk and I felt. Oh my gosh. We had our beautiful Tara's Angels business that we'd had for 7 years, and we were there, and people came in and people were helped, and it was a beautiful honor to our daughter, and it was doing its work. And we put our trust in an accountant, our total faith and trust. And that accountant siphoned us financially dry. And it was horrific because it was like, oh, is this a dishonor to our daughter? What are we going to do? I mean, it was devastating until we could rearrange our thoughts and realize we needed that experience before we started a center. We needed to know how carefully you have to handle money. And it isn't that you don't trust people. You're just being responsible and honest and good. And when you can reframe, it doesn't mean the hurt isn't there a little bit still, but we have a greater understanding that there's no such thing as failure except what's in our mind and our emotions, that when we lose something, we've lost our zest for living, we've lost our confidence in ourselves. We lose these things until we can rearrange our thoughts to put them in better perspective. So that's the first thing we need to do, is do the practice and own that God is right where we are and we're a work in progress. And in order to do that, and the thing I want you to know, I have a lot to talk about. I'll have to pick and choose here what I want to say. But I want you to choose just this week, maybe just tomorrow even. I know it's hard, to be present in your life. When you talked about the eternal now, the ever-evolving now, there's a story in Luke, in the book of Luke in the Bible, where he tells that Jesus was going to visit his friend Martha. And he went there, and Martha, Mary, and Lazarus lived there. And he went and was honored to be there. And Martha, he said to her, this was the quote, "Martha, Martha, you worry about 10,000 things, so few are needed. Indeed, only one." Martha was being a very hospitable hostess. She was doing running around, fixing, preparing, being distracted with all the serving everybody, taking care of everybody. It's a thing that was expected of her gender then, and probably still is somewhat now. But she was doing all that. But she was a great hostess. But there was one thing she wasn't. She wasn't present. And if you're not present to yourself, recognizing where you feel resentment, you're working too hard, or you feel you're not getting what you need, or she's not present to herself, how could she possibly be a healing presence to anyone else, or present for God? We need to be present in our lives, because that's where Spirit speaks, and that's where God lives. So I think on that note, I'm going to share with you one last thing. And here's a quote from Ernest Holmes, because the business you and I are in are about listening to God and hearing the answer. Again, God only knows the solution. God holds the answer and the solution because there's only one. So the work of raising our consciousness means that we stand in truth, unity, harmony, beauty, belief, joy, love. And as we consciously enter into the one, it consciously enters and becomes us. So we become that energy and that presence. We can speak words of truth, because to get to the practice, we have to speak words that keep us moving in that direction. We'll slip back. Sharon, you talked about that monkey mind. And that monkey mind will get us every time if we don't have something that overrides it. And those are mantras. So stand up. We're going to, first of all, Sharon had us listen to the silence. I was going to have us listen to the silence first, but Sharon, you already did that. Silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation from Rumi. When we are in that place of silence, we hear the voice of peace that says all is well. But here's what I want you to say, mantra. I am one with the mind of God. See if it was your mind speaking or your heart was speaking. When Gretchen was singing, it wasn't just her voice. Her heart was singing to us. And we have to make sure that when we're doing our mantras and our prayers, that it's not just lip service, that we have our heart involved. God is working in me and through me now. I know every problem I have right now has a solution. I am open to it. I accept it. I choose to listen. I choose to be present. And I choose to live life fully. Do you got your heart in that one? I could feel it. Give yourselves a hand.